Now, this person we're about to get into, this journalist, I can't imagine what was going through his head when he was sitting in front of the most powerful boss of organized crime in the world. You know, people used to criticize me when I'd say Mayo's the boss of Sinaloa's organization, and always has been. For some reason, people thought Chapo was the boss, but, you know, who went to prison and who didn't. And in Chapo's trial, he himself stated he's just an employee, so did his own lawyer to back that up. Now, if you'd like to help out the channel before we get into this, down in the description, there's a link to buy me a coffee. It goes directly to me. I appreciate it, as well as YouTube Super Chat. Or you could become a member to the channel. You get access to videos no one else is going to see, as well as videos I can't even put up here, like the missing women of Juarez, how they were killed and filmed. It's crazy. Or Patreon, same thing, but it's different. You get access to different videos than you would if you're a member. All that helps. And if you don't have anything but your time, that's just fine. And I'd really appreciate a like button out of you. Just smash it into non-existence. You guys, it doesn't cost you nothing but 1 second to click on it, and it helps me out immensely. It helps me bring this news to you. It helps the channel grow. As well as in the comments, let me know if you would be terrified if you had to sit in front of this man after you just made a article speaking on him. I think probably just about everyone would, but there's a lot of people who aren't afraid of what everyone else is afraid, right? Now, let's get into this insanity, my friends. There was a time when somebody wrote an article on Mayo Zambada, all right? And in this article, there was a guy with a watch, and in the face of the watch, it had a weed leaf with Mayo's face in the background. Now, this, drew a lot of attention at the time because no one had really done articles on Mayo like that because there wasn't a lot of information going around about him. But it was proven that Leche Santa Monica, which is one of the biggest companies of milk in Mexico, was owned by Mayo and basically had a monopoly. And that's what they were addressing in this article. Now, it was titled La Hora de Mayo, the time of Mayo, and that's why the watch kind of went along with the name. Now, the person who wrote this article was just going about their daily life, what they'd done any other day. But around 3 weeks later, his brother was at a protest, and he was covering it. He was also in journalism. And this was going on in Navolato. This is here in Sinaloa. And several men walked up to him very respectfully. They wasn't like, hey, come here. No, they said that their boss would like to speak to him. And he honestly thought it would be a politician or someone he'd written an article about because the way they were dressed, the way they spoke, everything about him. But he thought about it a little more, and he was pretty damn sure it wasn't a politician. It was the governor, is what he was thinking once he put more thought into it. But he got into the car and realized he wasn't going to the governor's mansion. In fact, they took him to a very nice house on the outskirts of Culiacan, and they pulled into this house, into the garage. He got out. They kind of walked with him, and there was somebody sitting with his back towards a window. And he realized he was looking at Mayo Zambada, and everything changed at that moment in his mind. I can't imagine what was going through his head, to be completely honest, to be in his shoes. Now, Mayo told him right off the bat that they were reporting on him in specific over and over, and he didn't like it. He didn't think it was right. There's lots of other people doing very horrible things in Mexico as far as violence and who knows what, and they're focusing over and over on his milk company and things like that. He just didn't think that was making too much sense. I think, to be honest, he thought someone was paying them or kind of pointing them in that direction, probably his rivals, and he could have been right. But either way, he said that Ismael Bajorquez was one of the first things he said, had a long time bothering him, and that was since he was in the newspaper El Noreste. And then he said, tell him, if you guys don't mess with me, I won't mess with you. that was about the other journalist who didn't like the article that had been written about him, right? And then he said, I know that you, talking to the one in front of him, and the people who work with you are good, honest journalists, and I have no problem with that. In fact, if you guys ever need help, I'm always here to offer a hand. You know, he was saying he respects journalists, and he wasn't going to hurt them in any way, that he doesn't do that. Not interested in it. And this guy kind of, I think, caught the vibe that this wasn't supposed to be a threat at all. It was more of a warning, you know, and not a threat. And there's a very big difference. You know, a threat implies that they're going to do something to you. A warning is just telling someone to back off. I think the threat comes afterwards, probably in this case. But either way, the people who worked at this newspaper and this news agency, I bet were completely shocked, especially for one, that he offered to help him. He told him he respected journalists and that they didn't touch him or rough him up or anything. And everyone was respectful, even Mayo's men. The way they treated him, I think, is what caught him off guard. If you think of any other article, let's say Mencho, if you wrote a bad article about him, look what happened to me, all right? They're not going to come up and give you a ride, Mencho's people, and tell you that they respect journalists and that they're good. You guys are good, honest men, just to stop signaling them out. I think we all know what would happen. It would probably be very violent, very brutal, and they'd probably just disappear as far as, you know, the journalist. And that's not just for Mencho, that's probably for any group of organized crime for the most part. But let's remember, the Sinaloa organization has invited Discovery Channel, National Geographic, BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, just about every major news agency or journalist in the world. Mayo has opened the doors for them completely to come to Sinaloa and film everything they want. No other criminal group in the history of the world has ever done anything like that. And people would say, why would he do that? It's because he's not embarrassed. He came from a very humble place, and the only way for him to get out of poverty and his family was this illegal substances, you know, and he's not embarrassed about that he has to supply a demand for these plants in the United States, even if they're illegal or not. He's not doing anything to the innocent population, or that would be embarrassing to him at the end of the day. He doesn't have any problem with people knowing that, and that's why they've been so open with the media. All they're doing is supplying a demand, and there's no bigger sign of not having anything to hide than just letting these people in, letting them film absolutely anything they want. Even the sicario camps, whatever, the kitchens where they cook it, whatever people wanted, he's given them access to it. And I've never heard of one journalist getting hurt in the process of this. And I'm not saying journalists don't get killed in Sinaloa, they do all the time. But there's always a talk and then a warning, and then if they keep going and just kind of blow the person off, disrespecting them, that's when violence comes into play. But it's not just like you write an article and then you get smoked the next day, like in lots of other places in this country. In fact, that's why I feel safe living here in Sinaloa and reporting. I've only had one incident in over 10 years where something happened, and it was not Mayo's people or anything like that. It was just rival groups, and it wasn't even directed towards me. It's where my ranch was. Unfortunately, these people were fighting over it, and I left it, and they kind of moved in. But it wasn't Mayo's people anyways. I just like to clear that out so no one thinks I'm accusing him or anything like that. To the contrary. It's a blessing to be able to actually live in Sinaloa, as far as, you know, being able to live here in Mexico and not have to worry about someone coming and hurting my family or something just because I'm reporting on it. I know if I lived in Tamaulipas or Zacatecas or Michoacan, it would be very different. I'd probably already be dead a long time ago. And that's because you guys know I report on everybody right across the board. You can look at my page. I have articles from Mayo Zambada's daughter to Chapo to his children to Mencho. I report on everybody right across the board. And that's a good way to know when journalists are compromised, everybody. You look at their page and look who they aren't reporting on and aren't speaking on ever. They're probably compromised or paid by those people. It's very simple. It'll take you guys 2 minutes to look at anyone's page or YouTube channel, and you can probably figure out very fast who's paying them off just by seeing who they don't report on. Now, with all that being said, this is a very unique incident, because the only other time I think I know from speaking directly with journalists would be with the older gentleman, Schaefer, and that was a very interesting interview. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It says Mayo's only interview. I translate it to English right here on this page. Very welcome to go watch it. I wish each and every one of you a superb day. I just thought I'd share this with you because it's an absolutely insane story. I can't imagine being in this person's shoes. Think that you're going to some politician's house and Mayo Zambada sitting in front of him. But that's the world we live in. It's a crazy place, my friends. Salavada.